delivery driver heard a baby crying in a North Dakota blizzard and made a choice that should have killed him. But 3 days later, 100 Hells Angels engines shook his street at dawn, and what they came to give him wasn't what anyone expected. What Josh didn't know was that he'd saved 2 lives that night, not 1, and the Brotherhood never forgets a debt like that. Before we get into this, where are you watching from right now? I want to see how far this message of brotherhood reaches. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. And if you believe in real stories about men who don't just talk about honor, they ride for it, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is built on loyalty, veterans who became bikers after service, and the kind of brotherhood that shows up when the rest of the world drives by. Now let's get into the story. North Dakota doesn't warn you when winter decides to kill. It was February, past midnight, and the blizzard had turned Highway 52 into a frozen grave. Visibility, 0. Temperature, 15 below. The kind of cold that turns your breath to ice and makes metal crack like bone. This is America's heartland, wide open, unforgiving, and built for people tough enough to handle it. Tonight, it wasn't handling anyone gently. Josh Hale gripped the steering wheel of his delivery van, squinting through snow that hammered the windshield like buckshot. 27 years old, worn Carhartt jacket, work boots held together with duct tape, and a mother back in Bismarck, whose medical bills didn't care if he was tired. He was always tired. The van's heater rattled and wheezed, pushing out air that barely qualified as warm. His phone-cracked screen, dying battery sat in the cup holder, GPS frozen on a road that didn't exist anymore. Just snow. Endless, suffocating snow. Josh had 1 delivery left, a late package to some farmhouse 20 miles outside Minot. Then he could go home, collapse on the couch, and do it all again tomorrow. That was the plan. But plans don't survive storms. And they sure as hell don't survive what was waiting for him in the dark. He pulled off onto a turnoff near County Road 17 to check the GPS, rubbing his hands together, breath fogging the air inside the cab. The engine idled, the wind screamed outside like something alive. And then something else. A sound, faint, desperate, cutting through the howl of the storm like a blade. A baby crying. Josh froze, his hand halfway to the gearshift. He turned off the radio, holding his breath, listening hard. Nothing. Just wind battering the van, snow piling against the doors. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. You're losing it, man. Get home before you freeze out here. But then it came again, louder this time. Unmistakable. High-pitched, terrified. The kind of cry that reaches into your chest and won't let go. A child. Screaming for help. Josh's heart kicked into overdrive. What the hell? He grabbed his flashlight from the glove box, threw open the door, and stepped into the teeth of the blizzard. The cold hit him like a freight train. Snow blasted his face, stinging his eyes, filling his lungs with needles of ice. The wind was so loud it drowned out his own thoughts. He could barely see 5 feet ahead, just swirling white chaos and darkness. "Hello!" he shouted, voice swallowed instantly by the storm. The cry came again, sharper now, closer, cutting through the wind. Josh stumbled forward, boots crunching through knee-deep drifts, flashlight beam spinning uselessly in the whiteout. His hands were already numb. His face felt like it was being peeled off. But he didn't stop. That cry, it wasn't fading. It was getting louder. Someone was out here. Someone small. Someone who didn't have much time. He pushed through the snow, each step a battle, following the sound like a lifeline. And then his flashlight caught something. A shape in the snow. A car. It was a sedan, older model. Maybe a Honda half buried in a snowdrift 20 feet off the road. The driver's side door hung open, swaying in the wind. The hood was crumpled, smoke or steam curling weakly into the night. The headlights were off. The engine was dead. But the crying? That was coming from inside. Josh's stomach dropped. He ran slipping, falling, scrambling until he reached the car and yanked the back door open. Inside, strapped into a car seat, was an infant, maybe 6 months old, cheeks bright red from the cold, tiny hands trembling, fingers curled into desperate fists, dressed in nothing but a onesie and a thin blanket that had slipped halfway off. No coat, no hat, no protection against the storm that was killing everything it touched. "Jesus," Josh whispered, his breath catching. The baby's eyes locked onto his wide, terrified, pleading, and the crying doubled in intensity. Desperate, primal. The sound of a child who knew, on some instinctive level, that this was the last chance. Josh didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He ripped off his jacket, his only jacket, the one keeping him from freezing, and wrapped the baby tight, pulling the infant against his chest. "I got you," he muttered, voice shaking. "I got you. You're okay. You're gonna be okay." The baby's cries softened, just slightly, as warmth finally touched frozen skin. Tiny fingers gripped Josh's shirt like a lifeline. Josh looked around the car, flashlight sweeping the interior. No mother, no father, no one. Just an empty driver's seat, keys still in the ignition, and footprints in the snow leading away from the car, already disappearing under fresh drifts. Whoever had been driving had left. Gone for help, maybe. Or tried to, and hadn't made it back. Josh's mind raced, adrenaline fighting against the cold that was already biting into his arms and chest. He couldn't leave the baby here. The car was dead. The heater was gone. In this cold, the child had maybe 10, 15 minutes before hypothermia shut everything down. He couldn't wait for help. There was no signal out here, no passing cars, no one coming. He looked down at the infant, now quieter, eyes half closed, gripping his thumb with impossibly small fingers. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a North Dakota blizzard with a dying child in his arms, Josh Hale made a choice. Not a smart one, not a safe one, but the only one that mattered. "We're getting out of here," he whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "Both of us." He turned and ran back toward the van, the baby pressed tight against his chest, the storm clawing at them both like it wanted them dead. Every step was agony. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, the snow tried to swallow him whole. But he didn't stop, because that baby was still breathing. And as long as that was true, Josh wasn't giving up. Behind them, the abandoned car disappeared into the snow. Somewhere out there, a mother was lost in the white. And Josh had no idea that the choice he'd just made, the choice to run toward the cry instead of away from it, would bring 100 engines roaring to his door. That the Brotherhood was watching, and that in 3 days, his life would never be the same. Josh slammed the van door shut, the baby pressed against his chest, both of them shaking. The heater sputtered to life, barely warm, but it was something. He laid the infant on the passenger seat, rewrapping the jacket tighter, tucking the edges under tiny, trembling legs. The baby's lips were pale, eyes half closed, breathing shallow. "Stay with me," Josh whispered. "Come on, kiddo, stay with me." He grabbed his phone. No signal, not even a bar. Of course not. This was North Dakota, 50 miles of nothing between you and help on a good day. In a blizzard, you were on your own. Josh threw the phone down and gripped the wheel. He knew one place that might still be open, a long shot, but the only shot he had, Rufus's Roadhouse. Josh floored the gas. The van fish-tailed immediately, tires spinning uselessly on black ice before catching just enough traction to lurch forward. Visibility was zero. The road was gone. He was driving blind, guided only by the faint memory of where the shoulder should be and the desperate hope that he wouldn't hit a ditch. The baby whimpered softly beside him. Josh reached over, placing one hand gently on the infant's chest, feeling the faint rise and fall. "You're tough," he said, voice cracking. "Tougher than me. Just hang on." The van slid again, hard wheels spinning, the world tilting sideways. Josh yanked the wheel, overcorrected, felt the back end swing out. For a moment, they were spinning. Then the tires caught gravel, and the van jerked forward. Josh's heart hammered in his chest. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cold. Come on! Come on! 20 minutes later, 20 minutes that felt like hours, Josh saw it. A glow in the distance, faint but unmistakable. Lights. He pushed the van harder, ignoring the grinding noise from the engine, the way the steering wheel shuddered in his hands. The glow grew brighter, and then he saw the sign, half buried in snow. Rufus's Garage and Roadhouse. Open late veterans. Welcome. Josh nearly sobbed with relief. He skidded into the parking lot, slamming the brakes, and grabbed the baby. The building was a low, brick structure with yellow light spilling from the windows. A dozen motorcycles sat parked outside, covered in snow, but still standing like sentinels. Josh kicked the door open and stumbled inside. The warmth hit him first, then the smell, coffee, engine oil, wood smoke, and then the silence. 9 men sat around a long table near the back, leather vests, road-worn faces, tattoos that told stories Josh didn't have time to read. At the head of the table sat a man with a grey beard, arms crossed, eyes sharp as broken glass. Rufus Kane, president of the North Dakota Road Wolves. Every head turned toward Josh. He stood there, soaking wet, shaking, holding a baby wrapped in his jacket. "Help!" Josh gasped. "Please, I found there's no mother, she's freezing." Rufus was on his feet before Josh finished the sentence. "Trig!" he barked, voice like a drill sergeant. "Blankets, hot water now." A younger man with a mechanic's hands shot out of his chair and disappeared into the back. "Steven!" Rufus pointed at another rider. "Medkit, move." Stephen, a man with scars on his forearms and the steady calm of someone who'd seen worse, grabbed a red duffel bag from the corner and jogged over. "Andrew," Rufus snapped his fingers. "Radio the state patrol. Tell them we got a situation." Andrew, older, quieter, nodded once and pulled a handheld radio from his belt. Within seconds, the roadhouse transformed. The tough men, the ones who looked like they'd break you in half for looking wrong, moved with precision, military precision. Trig returned with blankets. Stephen knelt beside Josh, opening the med kit, hands steady. "Set her down," Stephen said gently. "Right here." Josh laid the baby on the table, stepping back, his legs finally giving out. He collapsed into a chair, chest heaving. Rufus stood over him, arms still crossed, watching. "You all right, son?" Josh nodded, couldn't speak. Rufus placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You did good, real good." And for the first time since he'd heard that cry in the storm, Josh let himself breathe. But the storm wasn't over, and neither was the story. Stephen worked fast. He peeled back the jacket, checking the baby's color, listening to her breathing, feeling for a pulse at her tiny wrist. "Temps low," he muttered, "but she's stable, tough little fighter." Trig wrapped the infant in a thermal blanket, the kind used for shock victims. The baby's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time she didn't cry, just stared silent, exhausted, alive. Josh sat slumped in the chair, still shaking, staring at the floor. Rufus crouched beside him, voice low. "Where'd you find her?" "County Road 17, Josh said hoarsely. Car was buried in the snow, driver's side open, no one inside except her. Rufus's jaw tightened. "You see the mother?" Josh shook his head. Footprints leading away, but they were already covered. Rufus stood, turning to his men. "She's out there." No one spoke, but everyone understood. A mother doesn't leave her baby unless she has no choice. And if she'd gone for help and hadn't come back, Stephen looked up from the baby. "Boss, we got maybe an hour before that storm buries everything. After that, then we move now," Rufus said. Andrew stepped forward, radio in hand. State patrols snowed in. They can't get a unit out here until morning. Rufus' face didn't change. Then we handle it. He looked around the room at Stephen, Trigg, Andrew, and the others. Men who'd served in Fallujah, Kandahar, places most Americans only saw on the news. Men who'd come home and found a different kind of brotherhood on two wheels. Gear up, Rufus said. We're riding. In this? Trigg asked, glancing at the window where snow hammered the glass like fists. Rufus's eyes were cold. A woman's dying out there. We don't sit. No one argued. Within minutes, the roadhouse emptied. Engines fired up deep, guttural roars that shook the walls. Headlights cut through the snow like searchlights. Josh stood, still, unsteady. I'm coming with you. Rufus turned, sizing him up. You've done your part, son. She's still out there because of me, Josh said, voice hard now. I should have looked harder. I should have... Rufus stepped close, his voice dropping to a growl. You saved a life tonight. Don't you dare carry guilt for the storm. Josh met his eyes. Then let me help finish it. Rufus stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Put this on. He tossed Josh a spare jacket, heavy leather, lined with fleece, smelling like motor oil and road dust. Josh pulled it on. It was too big. But it was warm, and it felt like armor. The convoy rolled out into the blizzard, 6 bikes, 2 trucks, headlights stabbing into the white void. Josh rode in the lead truck with Rufus, gripping the dashboard as they crawled down County Road 17. The wind screamed, snow piled faster than the wipers could clear it, but the road wolves didn't stop. Stephen and Trigg flanked the road on bikes, searchlights sweeping the ditches. Andrew coordinated over the radio, calm and precise. Sector 2, clear. Sector 3, nothing yet. An hour passed. Then another. Josh's hope was fading. And then, wait! Trigg's voice crackled over the radio. I got something, 200 yards east, near the tree line. Rufus hit the gas. They found her collapsed against a fallen tree, half buried in snow. Her coat was gone. Her hands were blue. Her eyes were closed. But she was breathing, barely. Stephen dropped to his knees, checking her pulse. She's alive. Hypothermic, but alive. Rufus radioed for an ambulance, his voice steady. We got her. County Road 17, mile marker 9. Move fast. Josh knelt beside the woman, his throat tight. She'd crawled nearly half a mile from the car, in a blizzard, in the dark, searching for help for her baby. Rufus placed a hand on Josh's shoulder. You saved 2 lives tonight, son, not 1. Josh looked up, eyes burning. How? Rufus's voice was quiet, certain, because she heard you calling, and she crawled toward your voice. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, red and blue lights cutting through the grey dawn. Paramedics loaded the woman onto a stretcher, wrapping her in thermal blankets, moving with the kind of urgency that said she'd been minutes from the end. Josh stood back, watching, his chest tight. One of the paramedics, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, paused beside him. You the one who found the baby? Josh nodded. She smiled, exhausted but grateful. You saved her life, both of them. Josh didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who'd stumbled into the right place by accident. But Rufus, standing beside him, arms crossed, didn't see it that way. No such thing as accidents, son, he said quietly. Not on nights like this. 2 days passed. Josh went back to work. Back to deliveries, back to the routine that had defined his life before the storm. But he couldn't stop thinking about the baby, about the mother, about the way Rufus and his men had ridden into the blizzard without hesitation. He'd never seen anything like it. On the 3rd morning, Josh's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Josh Hale? The voice was rough, familiar. Yeah. Who's this? Rufus Kane. Road wolves. You got a minute? Josh sat up. Is she okay? The mother? She's alive, awake, talking. Relief flooded through him. Thank God. Yeah, Rufus said. But there's something you need to know. Josh met Rufus at the roadhouse an hour later. Inside, the place was quiet. Just Rufus, Stephen, and a state trooper named Hayes, a tall man with a tired face and a notebook in his hand. Sit, Rufus said. Josh sat. Hayes flipped open the notebook. Mr. Hale, the woman you helped find, her name's Rebecca Lawson, 29, single mother, lives in Minot. Josh nodded. Is she going to be okay? Physically? Yeah, she'll recover. Hayes paused. But she told us something interesting. Josh frowned. What do you mean? Stephen leaned forward. She said she heard a voice. A voice? Yours, Rufus said. Out in the storm, calling for her to hold on. Josh's stomach dropped. I yelled when I found the car, but she was half a mile away, Hayes said. No way she should have heard you, but she swears she did, and she crawled toward the sound. The room went silent. Josh stared at them. That's not possible. Rufus's voice was low, steady. Son, that woman was dying. No coat, no phone, no direction. She'd given up. He leaned closer. Then she heard you, and it gave her a reason to keep moving. Josh's throat tightened. Hayes closed his notebook. The doctors say if she'd stayed out there another hour, she'd be dead. You didn't just save the baby, Mr. Hale. You saved her, too. Josh couldn't speak. Rufus placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't know. But that's what makes it real. Later, after Hayes left, Josh sat alone with Rufus. What now? Josh asked quietly. Rufus smiled. A rare thing, but genuine. Now, we make sure people know what you did. I don't need recognition. It's not about recognition, Rufus said. It's about honor. And around here, when someone does something worth remembering, we remember. He stood, walking toward the door. Give it a few days, Josh, then you'll see what brotherhood looks like. Josh didn't understand. Not yet. But he would. 3 days after the rescue, the road wolves gathered at Rufus's roadhouse for their weekly chapter meeting. It wasn't fancy, just a table, folding chairs, coffee strong enough to strip paint, and men who'd earned their patches the hard way. Rufus sat at the head, Stephen to his right, Trigg, Andrew, and 8 others filled the rest. But tonight there was someone new at the table, Grace Kane, Rufus's wife. She was in her 50s, silver hair pulled back, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. She didn't ride, but she'd been part of the brotherhood longer than most of the men in the room. She set down a tray of sandwiches and poured coffee without asking who wanted any. You boys planning to sit here all night, or are you going to tell me what this is about? She asked, hands on her hips. Rufus smiled faintly. We're deciding what to do about Josh Hale. Grace raised an eyebrow. The delivery kid, the one who saved that baby? Yeah. What's there to decide? Grace said. You honor him. Trigg leaned back in his chair. He's not a vet. He's not a rider. He's just some guy who did the right thing. That's exactly why we honor him, Stephen said. Because he didn't have to. And he did it anyway. Andrew nodded. Code says we protect those who can't protect themselves. He lived that code without even knowing it. Rufus was silent, listening. Grace walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You know what needs to happen, Rufus. You've known since the night you met him. Rufus looked up at her. He's not one of us. Not yet, Grace said. But he could be family, and family doesn't need a patch to matter. Rufus stood, looking around the table at his brothers. We don't just honor courage with words. We honor it with action. He pulled out his phone and opened a group message, one that reached every Allied MC chapter in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Minnesota. He typed 4 words. We ride for Josh. Within an hour, the replies started flooding in. Count us in. We're rolling. See you there. By midnight, the plan was set. 100 bikers. one destination. Josh Hale's apartment in Bismarck. Grace smiled, shaking her head. You boys are going to give that kid a heart attack. Rufus grinned. That's the idea. The next morning, engines started across 4 states. Road wolves, iron reapers, Dakota defenders, veteran brotherhood chapters who lived by the same code. Loyalty, honor, protection. One by one, they rolled out Harleys, Indians, choppers, baggers, chrome flashing in the winter sun, exhaust clouds rising like war smoke. They didn't ride for glory. They rode because a man had done something worth remembering. And in America, in the heartland, that still mattered. The sound started small, a distant rumble, like thunder rolling across the plains. Then it grew, deeper, louder, closer. By the time the convoy reached the outskirts of Bismarck, North Dakota, it was a roar that shook windows and set off car alarms 3 blocks away. 100 motorcycles rolled down Main Street in perfect formation, 2 columns, staggered, moving like a single living thing. At the front, Rufus Kane, riding a blacked-out Road King, American flag snapping from a pole mounted on the back. Behind him, Stephen, Trigg, Andrew, and the rest of the Road Wolves. Behind them, chapters from across the northern plains, Iron Reapers out of Fargo, Dakota Defenders from Rapid City, the Roughneck Brotherhood from Billings, Montana. All of them veterans, all of them brothers, and all of them riding for one reason. People stopped on sidewalks, phones out, filming. What the hell is this? Bikers. Gotta be a funeral. Nah, man, look at them. They're smiling. Old men, veterans themselves, stepped out of diners and stood at attention, hands over hearts. A woman clutched her daughter's hand. Are they dangerous? Her daughter, maybe 10 years old, shook her head. No, Mama. Look at their patches. They're heroes. The convoy didn't stop, didn't slow, just rolled through Bismarck like a parade no one had announced, but everyone would remember. And at the center of it all, Rufus raised 2 fingers off his handlebars. The signal. Every rider behind him did the same. 2 fingers down. The biker wave, a sign of respect. Brotherhood, the code of the road. Josh Hale had no idea any of this was happening. He was at home, a small 1-bedroom apartment on the north side of Bismarck, making coffee, getting ready for another shift. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. Josh, you need to look outside. Now. He frowned, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain. And froze. The entire street was lined with motorcycles. Not parked. Idling. 100 bikes, 100 riders, all facing his apartment. Engines rumbling in perfect sync, creating a sound so deep it vibrated in his chest. Josh's heart hammered. What the hell is this? He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The cold hit him first, then the sound louder now, overwhelming, like standing next to a jet engine. And then, as one, every engine cut. The silence was deafening. Josh stood on his front step, breath fogging in the air, staring at the sea of leather and chrome. At the front, Rufus Kane dismounted. He removed his helmet slowly, deliberately, and walked forward. The crowd of neighbors, growing by the second, watched in stunned silence. Rufus stopped 10 feet from Josh. Josh Hale. Josh's voice cracked. What? What is this? Rufus's face was calm, proud. This, he said, gesturing to the 100 men behind him, is what happens when you do something worth remembering. Josh shook his head, overwhelmed. I don't understand. You will. Rufus stepped closer, his boots crunching on the snow-packed sidewalk. Behind him, 100 riders stood in formation, silent, still, watching. Josh's hands trembled, not from cold, from the weight of what he was seeing. You saved a life, Rufus said, his voice carrying across the street. 2 lives, and you didn't do it for money, you didn't do it for recognition, you did it because it was right." He paused, letting the words settle. "That's the code we live by, the code we ride by, the code we die by." Rufus reached into his vest and pulled out a small, folded piece of leather. A patch. Josh stared at it. It was simple black leather, silver stitching, the image of a wolf howling at the moon. Across the top, it read, "Road Wolves." Across the bottom, "Honor." "This isn't membership," Rufus said. "You didn't earn your colors, but you earned our respect. And in this brotherhood, that's worth more than any patch." He held it out. Josh's throat tightened. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Stephen said, stepping forward from the line. "Just accept it." Before Josh could respond, a small voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Josh." Everyone turned. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, blonde pigtails, pink winter coat, ran forward from the crowd of neighbors. Her mother tried to grab her, but the girl was faster. She stopped in front of Josh, holding up a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you," she said shyly. Josh knelt down, taking the paper with shaking hands. It was a drawing. Crayon, crooked lines, a stick figure holding a tiny bundle, snowflakes falling all around. At the bottom, in careful letters, "Thank you for saving the baby." Josh's eyes burned. The little girl smiled. "My daddy says heroes don't wear capes, they wear big coats in snowstorms." A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd, bikers, neighbors, strangers. Grace Kane, standing beside Rufus, wiped her eyes. "Out of the mouths of babes," she whispered. Rufus placed a hand on Josh's shoulder and gently pulled him to his feet. "Turn around." Josh did. Rufus pinned the patch to the back of Josh's jacket, right between the shoulders, where a rider's colors would go. "You're family now," Rufus said quietly, "and when a biker becomes your friend, he's your friend forever." The 100 riders finished in unison. The words echoed down the street, powerful and final. Then, slowly, one by one, the bikers began to clap. Not loud, not wild. Steady, respectful. The sound of 100 men honoring courage. Josh turned, tears streaming down his face, and looked at them. These men, strangers an hour ago, were now standing for him, for something he didn't even think was special. Rufus leaned in close. "You think you're not a hero, but every man here would have done the same thing. The difference? You actually did it." Trigg stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. "One more thing," he said. He opened the box. Inside was a coin silver, about the size of a $50, with a wolf etched on one side and the words, "Guardian of the Road," on the other. "Only 6 people have one of these," Trigg said. "Now 7. He pressed it into Josh's hand. Josh stared at it, speechless. Rufus's voice was quiet but firm. "You carry that, you carry us, anywhere you go, any time you need us, we're there." Josh nodded, unable to speak. The engines started again, this time softer, reverent. One by one, the riders mounted their bikes. Rufus gave Josh one last nod. Then he turned, swung his leg over his road king, and raised 2 fingers. The convoy rolled out, slow and steady, engines rumbling like a prayer. Josh stood on his front step, clutching the coin, tears still streaming. And for the first time in his life, he understood what brotherhood really meant. 2 weeks later, Rufus's roadhouse was packed. Not with bikers, though there were plenty. With families, veterans, neighbors, people who'd heard the story and wanted to be part of something bigger. The Road Wolves were hosting a fundraiser for Rebecca Lawson, the mother who'd survived the storm, and for her baby girl whose name, Josh learned that night, was Eva Grace. Long tables lined the roadhouse, covered with donated food, chili, cornbread, pulled pork, apple pie. Grace Kane and the biker wives moved through the crowd, refilling coffee, making sure no one left hungry. Kids ran around, laughing, playing tag between the bikes parked outside. And at the center of it all, Rebecca Lawson sat with Eva in her arms, tears streaming down her face as stranger after stranger came up to shake her hand, hug her, tell her they were glad she was alive. Josh stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, watching. He'd tried to stay away, didn't feel like he deserved to be here. But Rufus had called him personally. "You're part of this, son, whether you like it or not." Rebecca spotted him across the room. Their eyes met. She stood, holding Eva close, and walked over. Josh's heart pounded. "You're Josh," she said softly. He nodded. "Yeah." She didn't say anything at first, just stared at him, tears welling up. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her free arm around him. "You saved my whole world," she whispered. Josh's throat tightened. I heard her crying. I couldn't leave her." Rebecca pulled back, looking him in the eye. "You could have. Most people would have. But you didn't." She placed Eva's tiny hand in Josh's. "She's alive because of you." Josh looked down at the baby-wide eyes, chubby cheeks, gripping his finger with surprising strength. And for the first time, he believed it. He'd saved a life. 2 lives. Rufus stood up, clinking a spoon against his coffee mug to get everyone's attention. All right. Settle down." The room quieted. "I'm not much for speeches," Rufus said, "but I'm going to make an exception tonight." He looked around the room at the families, the veterans, the neighbors who'd once feared bikers and now stood beside them. 2 weeks ago, a man named Josh Hale heard a cry in a storm, and instead of driving away, he stopped. He got out. He fought through a blizzard to save a child he'd never met. The room was silent. That's the code we live by. That's what America's supposed to be about, taking care of each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He raised his mug. To Josh, to Rebecca, to Eva, and to every person in this room who believes we're stronger together. The room erupted in applause. Josh's face burned, but he smiled. After the fundraiser wound down, Rufus pulled Josh aside. "Got something for you." He handed Josh an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Josh did. Inside was a check, made out to Josh's mother's medical fund. $5,000. Josh's hands shook. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it," Rufus said. "The Brotherhood's giving it. You saved a life. We're helping you save another." Josh's eyes filled with tears. "Why?" Rufus's voice was quiet, firm. "Because when a biker becomes your friend, he's your friend forever. Next time." The legacy ride, and the moment everything comes full circle. Spring came slow to North Dakota, but when it finally arrived, the road wolves marked it the way they always did, with a ride. This one was special. The first annual Eva Grace Memorial Ride, a charity convoy to raise money for families in crisis, for mothers who needed help, for children who needed saving. And at the front, beside Rufus Kane, rode Josh Hale. Josh stood in Rufus's garage, staring at the bike in front of him. A used Harley Sportster, nothing fancy, but it ran smooth and it was his. A gift from the Brotherhood. "You ready?" Rufus asked, leaning against the door frame. Josh ran his hand over the handlebars. "I don't know. I've never ridden before." "You'll learn," Rufus said. "We all did." He handed Josh a helmet matte black, with the Road Wolves logo stenciled on the side. "Wear it with pride, son." Josh put it on. It fit perfectly. An hour later, 100 bikes lined up outside Rufus's roadhouse. Families stood on the sidewalk waving. Kids held signs. Veterans saluted. And at the front, Rebecca stood with Eva in her arms, smiling through tears. Rufus raised 2 fingers. 100 engines roared to life. Josh felt it in his chest, the power, the unity, the brotherhood. Rufus looked over at him and grinned. "Welcome to the family." The convoy rolled out, chrome flashing in the sun, exhaust rising like smoke signals, the rumble shaking the earth beneath them. They rode through Bismarck, through Minot, through small towns where people stopped and waved, where flags flew, where America still felt like home. And as they rode, Josh realized something. He wasn't just a delivery driver anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that mattered. That night, as the sun set over the plains, the convoy stopped at a roadside overlook. Rufus stood at the edge, looking out over the endless fields. Josh walked up beside him. "Thank you," Josh said quietly. Rufus shook his head. "You earned it." He turned, placing a hand on Josh's shoulder. "Guardians ride where angels walk," he said. "That's our creed, and now it's yours." Josh nodded, feeling the weight of the coin in his pocket, the patch on his back, the brotherhood at his side. The engines started again, and as they rode into the fading light, one truth remained. When a biker becomes your friend, he's your friend forever. If you believe that real heroes don't need a uniform or a badge, they just need the courage to stop when everyone else drives by, then like and share this story. Let America know that 100 bikers in North Dakota proved that brotherhood isn't about leather and chrome, it's about showing up when it matters most. Subscribe now for more stories like this, stories about veterans who turned bikers after retirement, fathers who protect every child like their own, and the kind of loyalty that rides through blizzards to save lives. And check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you. One's about a biker who stopped a kidnapping at a gas station in broad daylight. The other, how a Hells Angels chapter gave a homeless Marine the funeral he deserved when no one else showed up. Both will remind you why this brotherhood matters. Until next time, ride with honor. Guardians ride where angels walk. Respect rides forever. Red Rom.